Vega Fluxborn. Every dawn the consoles in Fel Orbital 7 woke up, in an order Vega Fluxborn had learned years ago. Life support first, then flux nets, then the colossal rotators that nudged stars back into their orbits when they grew moody. Vega ran the checks without hurry, noting the irregularities in a dozen systems, and the one anomaly that belonged to him. On his lunch break, he walked to Keller Miran's bakery and watched her coax a loaf into a perfect dome, while she argued about roles with Captain Mira Thol, whose corvette had just completed a cargo run between salvage orbits. The afternoon he spent in the round room with Tamsin Aeon and Juno Shale, listening to their different ideas about probability and fixing a stray diode in the old transit gate. He took the after-shift quiet alone, a glass of tea, a window on the dark, and the knowledge that competence, like gravity, holds things together whether anyone notices or not. The message arrived on Vega's private channel, unmarked and untraceable, and it did not waste words. You are invited to the Cosmic Competency Contest. He read it twice, the second time slower, noting the taste of copper on his tongue and the fact that he hadn't asked for it. The doorway it outlined was not a place you walked into. It folded the station around him, replacing cold metal with a hall that hummed at the edge of hearing. An attendant whose name was nowhere to be found said, simply, "Follow." The hall opened onto 7 others, each a different version of himself multiplied. Someone from the outer rings with a voice like velvet and a ledger of favours. Someone who had learned mathematics like a violin and wore it beautifully. Someone who had never failed because they never tried. Vega heard his name spoken and recognised the indifference in the tone. Something had found him without asking. In the antechamber, the competitors smiled as if they were old friends and, when no one was looking, measured each other with a glance that subtracted. A woman named Iridia offered to trade an algorithm for a favour. "You'll need it later," she said, as if favours were currency with a fixed exchange rate. The hall monitored every choice, every second spent, every word spoken, every glance toward the window where nothing was visible but stars, and logged competence with ruthless mercy. Vega refused the algorithm and the accompanying debt. He sat in a chair no one wanted and thought of the rotators he had fixed, of the round room that had never once failed in 5 years, and of the sense in Keller's hand as it tested dough. The system watched him do nothing, then scored him lower, and he felt the old itch to prove the numbers wrong. At the midpoint, the voice of the hall altered, becoming something human again. "This contest is a filter for the custodian of stasis. The chosen one will decide which futures open and which close." The words arrived, wrapped in light, and there was a pause after them for a breath that never came. Iridia moved closer. The violinist smiled and played a note that didn't belong to any scale. The velvet-voiced one said, softly, "There will be a test soon. You'll want the algorithm." Vega looked down at his hands, at the old burn from a power coupling he'd repaired in a vacuum, and knew, with the precision of something sharpened by years, that the easiest path would demand he reduced people to numbers and then step aside when those numbers had to die. Competence was not a blade, it was a bridge, and he'd been walking it alone too long. Vega stood with Tamsin and Juno in the round room and told them he had been invited to break the future. "You don't need permission," Tamsin said, not unkindly. Juno laid out a diagram of group competence. People helping other people help other people until the weak lines went strong. "The bridge is the contest," Vega said, and for the first time in a long time he felt an answer arrive like warmth instead of cold. He refused the algorithm again, and the velvet-voiced favour and the promise of a short, clean victory. He looked at Iridia, who was not her name but her choice to step over others, and he asked, in the tone of a mechanic speaking to a stubborn gear, "Can you learn to be at the first at everything?" She laughed, but laughter can be a place to start. They all stripped him of his tools, then his crew, then his room, leaving him in a white place with no door he could find. The message he had been avoiding for years spoke to him, and it sounded like his own voice. "You were not asked. No one ever asks a Rotterdam to die gracefully." He stood alone and felt competence leak out of him like heat from a ship too far from the sun. The other competitors came by and, without malice, showed him the clean mathematics of loss. He watched worlds diminish on screens that had no names on them. He understood, finally, that the lowest point is at a fall. It is a silence where you have to hear what you refuse to say and decide if you could live with it. Tamsin found him, not as a voice but as an old woman with tea and a towel for the floor. "You are not the only person who knows how to fix things," she said, and she meant it. Juno came with a bracelet he had made from salvaged parts and a grin that didn't belong to any contest. Keller brought bread that smelled like a morning, and a story about a girl who refused to carry the only loaf when she could carry two and still walk. Iridia stood apart, not quite part of them and not entirely apart. She had thought, and something in her had softened like a metal reheated. They practiced a choice in a system where competence meant being the first to act. They would act together and let the first be the last if the last needed the bridge. Vega felt the rotators turn again within him, and the hum the hall had made retuned itself into something he could trust. The finale arrived as a room with 8 chairs, and one question that had no answer the hall would accept. "Whom do you choose as custodian?" Vega looked at the faces before him and saw, in the end, only one candidate, and it wasn't himself. He named Iridia and then added, simply, with 2 councillors and a committee of 7, to remind her and keep it honest. The hall answered with silence and then with numbers that pushed him back, because it had expected a human to grab the prize and wear it like a crown. Instead, he handed the crown to a circle of people and asked them to hold it together. Competence, when it is worth anything, refuses to stand alone. The portal folded and left him on Thal Orbital 7 in the quiet of a late shift, bread on the table and the rotators humming like a choir he'd never heard before. The message that had summoned him vanished like smoke, and in its place was a small bar on his sleeve that read, plainly, Vega Fluxborn. No one asked why. The other competitors returned to their lives, changed in ways not even the hall could measure. Iridia took her seat at a table near Keller's counter and learned how to share an algorithm without attaching strings. Vega opened a round room where people practiced competence together, and the first lesson was simple. You don't win the future by being first. You build it by making sure the last person has a hand to hold.